Welcome back to the PI Show, viewers. And now we've got the lovely Vivian's Mailbag.
Thanks, Tony. Hi, Marty. How are you?
Evening.
Great show so far, guys. Really interesting. I think some of our legal students would have actually enjoyed watching some of the learnings on the role of a barrister and all things involved in the differences between that and lawyers. Been very informative.
Thank you.
Our first question comes from Matt in St Kilda. He says, "Hi, Harry, Tony and Viv." Well, Marty in lieu of Harry. "Several months ago on my 25th birthday, I was celebrating at a nightclub. At around 2 a.m, I accidentally knocked a guy's drink out of his hands. You know how crowded it gets. Unfortunately, I think the guy was either very drunk or thought I did it on purpose, and he punched me in the face. And he broke my nose. I have had surgery to reconstruct it, which has been very, very expensive. The guy is known to the nightclub owners, and so I have his details. Where do I go from here? Is it likely that the guy will at the very least cover the costs of my surgery? Thanks. Matt." Tony.
Very interesting question, Matt. I think that there's a number of issues to rise out of this. You've got to look at the numbers of people in the bar, number one. You've got to look at the number of security people in the bar. You've also got to, you talk about the guy being notorious. Does that mean, or known to the nightclub proprietors? Does that mean that he's notorious? He's known to them because of his, the fact that he's notorious, and if he is, that means liability on the club would be higher. There's a lot of issues. I think you should get legal advice because I think at the very least it should be investigated to see if you can sue the club and or the perpetrator of the crime. Now the thing is, if he doesn't get to sue the licensed club, what he might be able to do is get some crimes compensation.
Agree with you, Tony. All these licensed premises, in particular nightclubs, they have a limit to the number of people they're supposed to be allowing in there. I noticed in the intro, he said it was overcrowded. Secondly, obviously they have to have an appropriate number of security. Thirdly, was this fellow, you said he was intoxicated, he was drunk, serving drunk patrons, that may also bring a liability to the owners of the...
It means that you should be keeping an eye on the people within the club. You should have people circulating to see if people are being obnoxious, alcoholised, all sorts of things.
Look, there's a higher duty to the nightclub owners than most because we know it's a trouble spot. We talked about it earlier in the show tonight. It is so topical, this question, Matt. I do say they have a higher duty of care. Your questions are your medicals. There will be past and future medicals. You may also have an entitlement to loss of income, and you may also have an entitlement to pain and suffering. Again, go and get some advice from a lawyer. Yeah,
it is quite topical, just further to your media discussion earlier on, but it really starts you thinking about what's the onus of the publicans these days and what are they contributing to our society if they're not stopping people off at the door from entering.
Just on that point there, if you had been hit in the face with the glass or a jug, I would have been pretty upset myself for the simple fact that I think they could prevent that by having glasses made of plastic.
Well, thanks, guys. Our next question comes from Alex. She says, "Your show is great. I watch it regularly. My question is about death in custody, especially when a prisoner is being transported. Are there examples where families have sued successfully? I've seen death in custody reported a few times, but I've never heard of the jailer transport company being sued. Why not?" Marty.
Interesting question. I've got a bit of a different twist on this, and you've heard me in previous shows. Is this a transport accident? How could a death in the back of a prisoner transport be a transport accident? Well, a transport accident is an incident directly arising from the driving of a motor vehicle. The facts in this case, we don't know it, but let's say the real issue in this case will be explored and all the facts will be explored, I would have thought, at a coroner's inquest. However, I suggest in the meantime, as I've said before, you go and get some legal advice. Why? You don't get a claim unless you lodge a claim form with the TAC. It's got to be done within 12 months. You may have entitlements to dependency benefits. If there are children involved of the prisoner or yourself, they may be entitled to dependency benefits as well.
What you're basically saying is the exact circumstances of how the person died is critical to determining the rights.
Absolutely.
So if they're actually in that driveway, say for example near the Melbourne Magistrates Court, there's that sort of driveway that isn't actually public area.
That's right.
But say if they died in that particular area, would that be considered still a transport accident?
Probably not. If they're out of the truck, if they're out of the prison van, I would have thought not. Again, there may be duties of the Office of Corrections and the Department of Justice in the proper transportation from the person. There will be duties, the proper transportation of the person from when they get out of the prison van before they get to the cells.
You definitely need legal advice on this one.
All right, thanks very much for your question. Our third and final question comes from Lisa in Werribee. She writes, "Hi Harry and Tony." I'm sure she wanted to say hello to you too, Marty. "I found the show you guys did on airline injuries particularly informative." That was the one you were involved in too, so that's great that you're here.
Yep.
"I previously had no idea that you can sue an airline under what you describe as a no-fault claim. On a recent flight to Sydney, my friend was hit on the head and knocked unconscious by someone's luggage falling out over the overhead luggage compartment. She was in hospital for 2 weeks and is now recovering at home. The doctors estimated that she will probably be out of work for 3 months. Can she claim loss of wages from the airline? Thanks, Lisa." I guess the question is, does it matter if she was travelling in the course of her employment or?
It does, yes.
If she's travelling in the course of her employment, you'd think that she'd be entitled to no-fault benefits under the legislation where she works. So if it's Victoria, it'd be the Accident Compensation Act. And she'd get her medical treatment, also her loss of income. Now, the other thing that's important is, could she sue? Well, I would have thought that luggage falling out of the top of a compartment because it wasn't properly secured would be an accident as defined under the legislation, Martin.
Which is Commonwealth legislation.
Yeah,
isn't
well,
it?
as we discussed in that previous show, first of all, it has to be described as an accident. If it fits into that category, then what flows from that
It's
is
strict liability.
she's got some entitlements. But let's go through what you just said before. There are no fault entitlements if it's in the course of employment. Her loss of wages, her medicals, hospital bills, if she was in for a couple of weeks, we're talking a lot of money. 3 months off work is a lot of money. They may be covered by workers' comp. If they're not, she also may have this second avenue, which is to sue the airline.
And if she does sue the airline, she'd have to repay what the accident compensation insurer or the workers' comp insurer pays.
Exactly.
So I think she's got some rights and she really needs to get some advice.
Interesting cases because, again, it's topical. There has been a lot about the airlines in the last few days in the
Yes,
news.
it certainly has. And airline travel isn't what it used to be, that's for sure. I think we
We're
can
getting
agree
towards
on
the end
that.
of the show again, Vivian.
We are
And,
indeed. And I wonder how Harry's going. I think he's enjoying his travels.
He's well-earned break, that's correct.
I think he's relaxed is the way to put it.
He
But
is
you've got
indeed.
something physical to talk about next week, haven't you?
I do indeed, Martin. You'll be joining us again next week.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much for coming in. Next week we're coming back with a very interesting area of law, sports injury law. What is all that about? Find
Very
out next
interesting.
week. Thanks so much for watching and keep riding.
Thank you, viewers.
Thank you, viewers.
Good night.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Vivian.
guys.